Well, there it is. Let's go over Remo Demo's notes. He's a shoutcaster for Back to Warcraft. You might recognize him. So he's wrote quite the lengthy debate here, and I'm going to use text to speech. It will be in an English voice for the time being until the program forces me to use the standard, which is still like an English type voice, American or something. So it should be easy enough to understand. The reason why I'm not reading it out myself is because during the summertime I get this kind of like asthmatic kind of thing where if I talk too much, I start to get this urge with my throat to cough and it's kind of uncomfortable. So I don't think I can read through all of this. So we'll let the text to speech do what it's going to do. These are the balanced notes. I'll have a link to this as well. And yeah, you can see there's like 10 pages worth. So I'll just respond as and when I feel necessary.
The State of Warcraft 3 Balance Post WGL Summer 2020. Overall, the state of balance is currently...
First of all, chat, do you think that's fast enough or slow enough? It sounds like I could go like one speed faster, to be honest. I don't want it to be so quick that some people can't understand, but I normally type. I speak quite quickly myself, actually. And I listen to podcasts on 2 times speed, so it doesn't bother me, but some people
Overall, the state of balance is currently in an alright spot. All races are competitive and can win tournaments.
Oh,
and this is once again the skill bracket I'm going to be focusing on. The top players. The most important skill bracket, in my opinion. While every race can perform well, there are still issues. Every race has one hard matchup currently. For Orc it is against Net Elf, for Undead it is against Orc, for Net Elf it is against Human, and the biggest problem child for Human it is against Undead. If we could find ways to level the playing field in those matchups, we should be making big strides towards making the game a lot more balanced and enjoyable. Orc versus NE. Problems. Net Elf hits an immense power spike early, once the Keeper of the Grove reaches level 3. The most important goal for the Orc in the early game is to prevent the Keeper's progress and delay level 3 for as long as possible. The issue here lies with scouting. Orc cannot afford to send peons to scout, as they need every single peon for their one burrow tech, which is the only competitive build on the top level. Using grunts to scout is extremely risky, as they might get entangled and killed, leading to the Orc falling further behind. It does not sound like a very big deal, but it is. Scouting is absolute key in the early game for Orcs, and they need some help in that regard.
I'm not even talking.
Possible solution. Give the Orc Altar a single-use Farsight ability like the Farseers with a starting cooldown of 90 seconds. Meaning you can use it 90 seconds after the Altar of Storm's completed. Risk, low. While scouting is important, it only goes so far. It helps you make important decisions, but it only does so much. The single-use quality gives the ability and interesting aspect. While the usage of it is free, you still have to be very careful with when you use it, as you will only be able to once per game. In the hands of a good player it can be properly used to give them that slightest edge they need, while still not endangering other matchups by being too powerful. The Net Elves will always get their expansion and a bigger army faster than the Orc, while the Elf tries to overwhelm with pure mass the Orc.
So in resolution to the Altar having Farsight, I don't see that happening. But what other solutions could there be? Because it's easy to say, well, that's not the right solution, but what would the other solution be? The issue he's saying is, if you scout with a grunt, it could get killed. That'll put you behind. If you scout with a peon, it's almost definitely going to get killed, and it's slow and clunky. So make peons fast, maybe? Make them faster, like acolytes. Then they might be more reliable scouts. I think that might be a better option than actually having them be giving the Altar Farsight. Even if it's only a one-off use, it just seems kind of weird to me. So I think actually a better solution, depending on how the Orcs feel about it, is, well, I shouldn't say a better solution, just a different solution, is the movement speed for the peons. Because acolytes can move so damn fast. Because peons are pretty damn slow. Peasants are slow as well, so But, I mean, we came across the peasant issue before. If they could gather lumber quicker, I wouldn't mind them being slow or whatever. Wisp is very fast, yes. So Wisp doesn't have a problem scouting. They can normally back off if they're being chased. But a peon, not so much. I think a peon scout is fine, though, because people say, like, all orcs can't scout or something because they're fast-teching. But being able to fast-tech is actually pretty advantageous, so there should be punishment for that. And at least if you made the peon a little bit faster at scouting, it might compensate, and then they can still use a peon to scout because they'll still get lumber. It's human that suffers the most when it comes to getting lumber, that's for sure. So I don't know about that. Anyway.
While the elf tries to overwhelm with pure mass, the orc attempts to unlock powerful tech or heroes to hold on against the onslaught. However, those unlocks often teams fall just a little short. They could use slight buffs. Possible solutions: reduce mirror image mana cost to 80. Make lightning shield grant +1 armor. Make improved pulverize also grant Torrens resistant skin. Risk: low. The mirror image and lightning shield changes are minor ones that would help, but should certainly not be too extreme by any stretch of the imagination. Whilst giving resistant skin to Torrens is certainly a considerable change, it is one that is needed. Torrens are still by far the weakest tier 3 melee fighters, and they need a bit of help. With this change they receive a bit of durability and also ease of execution without making them too strong.
I think he has a point. I like the way he presents solutions. It seems clearer to understand than going through the Todd patch notes. So reduce mirror image, mana cost to 80. I think it's currently at 125. Oh, hello. That seems fine to me because mirror image is a cool ability. I would like to see more people use it, actually. It's annoying to fight against, but at the same time, it's cool for the player. I've always liked the aspect of it because it can be used to dodge, like, coil or stormbolt and stuff like that. So I feel like it'd be almost like a nice passive ability for an orc to have on their Blade Master. But obviously, it's a main ability. And by passive, I mean some sort of, like, base ability. But that's more kind of a Dota kind of thing. You know, like a Blink or something like that. But anyway, so I'm quite happy with mirror image being reduced in cost. Lightning Shield grants +1 armor. Maybe if that was done, then reduce the power of Lightning Shield, because Lightning Shield is insanely strong versus human. It's bloody annoying to deal with, and I hope it wouldn't be on creeps as well, because when creeps cast Lightning Shield on a unit and you're trying to kill that unit, you know, you don't want that unit sticking around even longer. So I don't know about the Lightning Shield. I'd say no to that. Improved Pulverize also grants Torrent's resistant skin. That's fine, because it's not too easy to get that upgrade. It takes a long time. It stops you from building more Taurens. It's quite expensive. Tauren resistant skin would have to be specifically designed to be a very minor version of what the mountain giants get. So I'm happy to have Taurens be tankier and stronger, but only, like, you know, just by the smallest amount. Like, for example, Knights, they got that new ability that increases their damage versus medium armor targets by 15% damage. It would be something like that, 15% extra armor, effectively, to a degree. But it can't be as strong as the mountain giants.
Making them too strong. Adversus Orc. Problems. Between Hex, Stomp, Ensnare, Purge and Orb of Lightning, the Orc has too much strong lockdown. Especially against heroes. A slight nerf would be appropriate. Possible solution: make Orb of Lightning proc unable to trigger upon attacking heroes. Decrease the War Stomp stun duration on heroes from 2-3-4 seconds to 2.75-3.5 seconds. Risk: low. The orb is almost exclusively used against undead to begin with. Against units it remains just as effective. This would be a healthy change to allow us to get just that tiny bit more out of their heroes that they need. And as far as Stomp is concerned, the spell is still very strong. Most likely still a little too strong. Especially against heroes. The super late game arm is
Surely not. An AoE stun? No, that couldn't be strong. So, once Orb of Lightning proc to no longer be able to trigger upon attacking heroes, So whenever you attack a hero, you can't actually proc the effect of Orb of Lightning, which is to purge and slow the hero down. I don't necessarily see enough pro games to see how effective this is from denying an opponent from running away with their hero, but I'll have to assume that he has a point. Maybe still have it able to affect heroes, but just dramatically reduce how much it pins them to the ground, aka when you get purged, you're like stuck, and then you can sort of run. So just reduce that stuck position and just allow them to move away slowly. As for the War Stomp, yeah, I mean, that's a very minor nerf, but it's still probably necessary. 3.5 seconds, very specific. I think that's fine because War Stomp is incredibly strong.
Especially against heroes. The super late game armies usually consist of mass fiends versus mass berserkers, with a few casters for buffs and debuffs mixed in. The Orc has the advantage here as their supporting casters. The Spirit Walkers have both a powerful buff in Spirit Link as well as a dispelling disenchant. The supporting units for Undead Destroyers and Banshees are considerably weaker, as Destroyers get heavily countered by the mass Berserkers and Banshees only have curses and effective ability. Undead could use a bit of help with their supporting casters. Possible solutions: decrease Destroyer's Devour Magic cast point, decreasing the time it takes to cast the spell. Buff Necromancer's Unholy Frenzy ability by reducing the HP second drain from 3 to 2. Risk: low. The Destroyer change would have a slight impact on micro-precision with a Dispel. Timing, but would certainly not increase the unit's power level by a significant amount. This would rather be a quality of life improvement for the player, feeling more in control of his army because of the decreased delay on Dispel. Necromancers are still almost entirely unused because of their underwhelming spells. This slight buff might make them relevant but should not be going too far.
Okay, so Destroyers Devour Magic cast point, decreasing the time it takes to cast the spell, is fine. Either that or just increase the turntable time of the Destroyers themselves, because they're fairly slow, I've noticed from games where I've seen Grubby play Berserkers and he'll attack the Destroyers. They go to sort of use a Devour Magic to remove the Spirit Link, and then they sort of turn around to escape, but then they get Orb of Lightning and super focused down. They're quite sluggish in their movement, almost like a tank. So you could either do that or just, like Remo says, just reduce the time it takes to actually cast the point so they can do that and then sluggishly move away, so they can potentially have more chance of escaping through actual micro so they don't get punished. So I'm fine with that. Buff Necromancer's Unholy Frenzy ability by reducing the health second drain from 3 to 2. Sure. Necromancer's always a bit of a gamble unit. I don't feel like they necessarily should get a buff though. Mostly because they can sometimes be too strong and overwhelming. They're either like going to be really bad and you just absolutely obliterate someone who's got Necromancers, or they're so strong you just cannot, even with maximum effort and maximum micro, actually overwhelm. Deal with the overwhelming power of the Necromancers, the Skeletons, and the Unholy Frenzy on Crit Fiends and stuff. So I feel like that's a very dangerous thing to touch Necromancers. It needs a bit more thought, maybe discussion between undeads as to whether they think Necromancers actually should genuinely get a buff, like an actual honest opinion. I don't have enough of an experience playing them, other than when I'm just sort of already in a powerful position as undead, and I've got an expansion and I just go Necromancers because why the hell not? And I just overwhelm my opponent. So, yeah, it's hard to deal with Necromancers.
Any versus Q. Problems. Nitels have no second hero of similar strength to the opposition. This goes for pretty much all matchup, by the way. In the past, Pandair and Brewmaster used to be a late-game powerhouse for Elf. But nowadays his power level is much lower compared to the late-game carries of the other races, DC, MK, Flick. Possible solutions. Make the Drunken Haze debuff undispellable, similar to the way Acid Bomb from the Alchemist works.
Or me.
This would give the panda more late-game utility and would make it harder to counter him. Exactly what he needs, as heroes that get countered by Dispel always fall off greatly in the late game. Reduce Drunken Haze mana cost from
I
70
don't
to
know.
60.
I think Panda's pretty
Increase
strong.
Drunken Brawler evasion chance from 7, 14, 21 to 9, 18, 27. Risk, low, low, low. While the first suggestion would certainly be a significant one, it would also be one that the panda desperately needs to become viable again. This change should help him greatly without being too powerful. The other two suggestions are just slight buffs that would further empower the hero, but should not have the most profound impact. While Human has plenty of strong units to choose from.
So as for the panda, I don't think he needs any buffs, to be honest. He's still very strong in my opinion. Drunken Brawler, maybe you can update that. That would make him a bit more powerful in the late game, as you're saying. His issue is in the very late game. He might not necessarily match up to the Mountain King or something. So as the game goes on, he's more likely to have points in Drunken Brawler if you're getting into that much of a late game. So effectively, he could... I mean, I've seen Todd. He's actually started going like Breath of Fire and Drunken Brawler in some of his matchup. He just ignores Drunken Haze. I don't know about making Drunken Haze undispellable though. It's pretty powerful, really. You know, it's I think even at level 1, it's like a 45% and 45%. So like 45% slow, 45% chance to miss. AOE. It's not, it's not a bad ability at all. So I don't know. That really needs changing.
While Human has plenty of strong units to choose from, Nitelf only seems to have 2 units that perform truly well, Archers and Mountain Giants. Especially the later the game goes, the more hard-countered everything from the Nitelf gets. Be it bears, chimeras, fairy dragons or dryads. Everything gets answered quite easily from the Human. And the biggest offender here is the Sorceress slow ability. Especially against bears, which are supposed to be the most reliable, powerful late-game tech for Nitelf, this spell is way too good. With everything slowed down so significantly, it is always much easier for the Human to properly control the fight and get much better value out of his army. Possible solutions: increase Druid of the Claw starting mana by 25 and decrease Druid of the Claw bear form ability mana cost from 25 to 15. Out of all the tier 3 heavy melee units, bears have always had the most utility. With their abilities Rejuvenation and Roar, they are quite unique amongst their peers in being able to influence a battle. By helping with their mana management, we would lean more into their special niche personality, also helping with ease of execution, without making them too strong in their stat line for actual combat.
Okay, so I don't know about giving them an extra 25 mana, because it's annoying enough when they come out and then they just run towards the Demon Hunter who's on 1 health and running back to them and they get a rejuvenation just at the last moment. But the actual mana cost for the bear form from 25 to 15 I'm fine with. That way there's less punishment for actually microing the bears and putting effort into coming out of the form, casting the ability, going back into the form. So I'm all up for that. But I don't think they need like an increase in starting mana.
Without making them too strong in their stat line for actual combat. Reduce Sorceress slow ability movement speed slow from 60% to 50%. While buffs and debuffs in Warcraft 3 were always intended to provoke a play and counterplay interaction with casting spells versus dispelling them, for Nitelf versus Human this is just not possible. The Human has way more mana to cast his spells than the Nitelf ever has the ability to follow up with Dispel. As Dryads are too weak to mass produce and Wisps are too expensive and also too damaging to the bear's mana pool on top of being too hard to use defensively. We just simply have to live with the fact that Human can slow everything down and there is not much that the elf can do about it. And since slow cannot be countered or prevented, it has to be slightly weakened.
Yeah, as a human player, although not really, I'm basically a random player. I mean, my last, I think, 50, 60 games have been random. I do think slow is very strong. It's very annoying to fight against, so a nerf to slow is fine. 60% to 50%, I'm okay with that. And that's coming from someone that, you know, doesn't want human being touched, really.
And since remove Chimera's friendly fire splash damage. This just seems like an unnecessary, Clumsy relic of the past. Risk, low, low, low. This would be a tiny buff to bears only, and one that they could also very much use in the other matchups versus Undead and Orc. The slow nerf would certainly be significant but well placed. Orc can struggle very hard against slow while also having no good counter to it. Human Mirror would also benefit from a slow nerf as with that. Perhaps the rampant mass breaker wars would subside. And against Undead, where
Remo hates slow.
human struggles, slow is a non-factor thanks to destroyers. Additionally, slow takes away from the micro component of War 3. It quite literally slows down the game and can deteriorate battles into a very dull affair. So a slow nerf should be beneficial all around. Hue versus HUD. Problems.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Sexy time. Hold yourself. Calm down. I know you're an agitated chap, but what's your problem? What's your solution then, Sexy time? You don't think slow is too strong? Remo's presenting some pretty good ideas here. He has a good way of writing his thoughts down and potential solutions. He might not necessarily be correct about all of it, but he's at least trying. Remove Chimera's friendly fire splash damage. Either that or just reduce the effect of it. Because I wonder what the knock-on effect from that would be. Like, it would almost be funny if that happened and then the next meta is just every night elves going mass chimeras because they no longer hurt their own bears and stuff. So it's some sort of combination of bears and chimeras, rejuvenating the chimeras so they can keep whacking away. I don't know. It is annoying though, that friendly fire splash. It is kind of stupid. So yeah, I'm sort of okay with that. Okay, human versus undead.
Around. Hue versus HUD. Problems.
Nerf undead.
Human seems to have no chance playing on one base. They have to expand every game, trying to survive until tier 3 and 70 supply. That makes games very one-dimensional, predictable and boring. Human needs some help to encourage and improve one-base play.
Yeah,
once human does have their tier 3 unlocked, they can become very powerful. So I believe the correct approach should be to facilitate the T3 transition rather than buffing the actual units too much. Possible solutions. Reduce castle tech from 360 to 320.
Like, human buildings are bloody expensive as well. Like, the castle tech is 360. The town hall, I can't remember how much it cost to build, but it costs more than the other races. So whilst you get the fast build to get your building quicker, you're spending like 500, 600 gold and like 200 to 300 lumber getting that damn thing up. Whilst a night elf just whacks down a tree of life with one wisp and goes AFK. You know what I mean? And they've got that tree of life just building in the background for dirt cheap.
Possible solutions. Reduce castle tech from 360 to 320 gold. Reduce Staff of Sanctuary cost from 250 to 175 gold. Make Sundering Blades intrinsic to knights, so they don't need to research the upgrade anymore, but rather have it naturally already.
Either that or have the upgrade really
Remove Priest's
quick.
heal cast point to make the spell cast instantly, like Obsidian Statue's Essence of Blight.
I think in general, a lot of the upgrades in Warcraft 3 take too long. That's one of the big things that's kind of a downside to actually bothering to get them, because as the game progresses, technology is being increased, and by the time you've got Defend, for example, on your footmen, they're already useless anyway, a lot of the time I find. So if you just made upgrades in general, like 15 to 20% quicker, people could actually respond to their appropriate counters more efficiently.
Remove Priest's heal cast point to make the spell cast instantly, like Obsidian Statue's Essence of Blight ability. To compensate for that, we would need to introduce a matching cooldown for the spell, of course. This may not sound like much, but it would actually make all the difference in the world. Priests are super clumsy and annoying to use exactly because of this.
Clumsy.
Because they are always busy healing. This means you can't move them, you can't micro them. Off 10 teams you can't even use the spell. Because they're always busy healing. Giving them the statue treatment would be an immense quality of life improvement. And a slight buff that the priest could certainly use. Important, however, when you manually give the priest a command to heal a target, He should still stick to that allied target for healing and not reset his priority with every...
Yeah, that's really effing annoying. If I want to have my priest or a shadow troll priest focus on healing my archmage, I don't want him to suddenly swap over to frickin' water elemental that's got 20% duration left. Because the priests and the healers in this game do that a lot. And you have to concentrate and you have to heal, press E every single time he's ready to heal manually. Or you got to try to hope that they're going to heal the right target. So yeah, there could be a much better improvement to the actual AI in terms of how priests perform their heal.
Important, however, increased priest's dispel range from 600 to 700, reduce mana cost from 75 to 65, and reduce the spell cast point to make it cast faster. Risk, low low moderate low low. Helping with the expense of going tier 3 for humans should help in this matchup and not impact the other matchups too much. If anything, it should help human mirror tremendously. Priests are a staple in many human armies, but they suffer from annoying habits. Ones that we should fix.
You can't always micro them back because they clunkily
Sundering
heal.
blades not requiring an upgrade anymore would be the only very significant change. This is certainly a big buff. One that will make knights much better in games where a lot comes down to crisp timings.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with removing the research or making it really quick, because by the time you get tier 3, if the opponent's good and they're still on tier 2, they're gonna want to kill you before you get too many tier 3 units out. So when you've got like a barracks and then you've got 2 upgrades for the knights before they become fully upgraded, or, you know, effective in terms of animal war training and the Sundering Blades, it's the same sort of thing with Tauren. You know, like you've got that pulverized, but it costs an absolute ton and it takes ages to research before the Tauren can like become fully effective. So reducing the timing on upgrades would certainly help, I think.
Crisp timings. But I believe this would still be a good change in the right direction. Crit Lord is a little too strong.
No.
While the buffs to the Crit Lord were very good and refreshing for the undead meta game, after a lot of testing it has now turned out that they went a little too far.
He is fun to play though.
But the situation can be rectified. Possible solutions. Increase level 2 carrion beetle collision size from 16 to 32. Beetles are strong, and they need to be for us to have a viable first hero outside of DK. But especially as far as economy Harris is concerned, they are a little too strong. The headache that 4-6 beetles can cause in a main base or inside of an expansion is too much. By increasing their collision size to 32, players would be able to wall off against them. Something that is currently not possible. This would help a tremendous amount and simultaneously allow for smart counterplay. Remove the burrow ability.
That's a pretty good idea, actually. It would be a really strong counter towards beetles, because effectively it's like sending 4 to 6 ghouls to the enemy base, except it doesn't matter if they get killed because they're summons. So you're just basically disrupting the opponent's economy, and obviously, you know, a lot of peons or worker units take extra damage from units like ghouls or carrion beetles because they do normal damage, which is effective. So it's doing bonus damage, so it's really strong at picking off worker units, almost to the effect that it is like too cost effective to actually even try to defend against them sometimes. So that's an interesting one. I'm not 100% sold on increasing their collision size, but I like the idea of it in terms of the potential, but I'm not sure whether I would fully agree with it to go ahead.
Remove the burrow ability from level 2 carrion beetles. The Crit Lord summons are quite tough to kill already. That should not be made even harder with
maybe
burrow.
it should just be a level 3.
For level 3 beetles, burrow is fine, but for level 2 beetles it is a little too much. Decrease level 2 beetles HP from 330 to 310. Again, this serves to curb the power spike of level 3 Crit Lord a little, which should be the proper thing
insane.
to do.
As soon as you get level 3, it's
Risk,
boom, level
low,
2.
low.
Beetles.
While we want the Crit Lord to remain a viable first hero option, currently he is a little overtuned. These outlined changes should be the proper ones to take to make him more fair. Games never lead to counter-expansion play from the undead, but always are determined by the odds all-in push towards the expansion. That is in parts because the tier 3 push is so strong, but also in great parts because counter-expanding is made very difficult by one single unit, the siege engine or tank. Tanks have for the history of War 3 been the most frustrating units in the game. That is in my opinion alone enough to nerf them.
No, they should
But
fly.
additionally to this, they are the main reason why Undead is hesitant to counter-expand. As in a 2-base versus 2-base game, tanks are way too efficient and hard to deal with. Tanks are partly responsible for why the UVI matchup is stale and unhealthy. Possible solutions: nerf tank HP from 700 to 500. Increase tank experience bounty from 60 to 85. Risk: low.
Don't think it's necessary. Tanks already got their
no other unit
supply
can cause
costs
as much frustration
from 3
as
to 4.
This one,
which
they
reduces the amount
to
of
kill,
them that you
too
can have.
strong against
So
buildings,
you are
give too
hurting
little
yourself
obey.
by going tanks.
Reward for
Like
killing
effectively,
them
almost. I know I'm not at the top level, but almost every time I've gone tanks, I've practically thrown the game against an undead because undead army and heroes are so ridiculously strong that if you go tanks, you don't have an army or a hero to fight them with. And if those tanks don't do their proper job, which is pretty hard in an undead base because of Nerubian towers. Nerubian towers are a pretty damn good answer to tanks. As long as you're micro in it and making sure that each tank is being like tapped by the Nerubian tower, you just lose those tanks. They give quite a lot of experience anyway. And then the undead becomes even stronger and it's even harder to kill their heroes and army. So I disagree. I think tanks is already pretty much a gamble. They are bloody annoying though. But I don't know. I don't think they should get nerfed in this fashion. Just maybe reduce the damage they do or something. So they're not so quick at blowing up bases. They're effectively tanks because they should have a lot of health, but they don't necessarily do as much damage if you was going to touch them at all.
Reward for killing them and don't promote any of the fun, interactive microplay that makes this game great. And they force Undead to stay on one base, making games predictable and leading to a less diverse meta. Human and everyone else as well is absolutely fine with these units weakened. Peasants are too vulnerable to the Undead harass and just economy harass in general.
Peasants
Throughout the last few patches, other races' economies have been blessed to make them more robust. With Orc having fortified burrows now on tier 2 and Undead acolytes having been made stronger. This was a very good development for the game. Matches became less about avoiding fights and only laming against the economy and more about army interaction on the map between the players. While Nitel still has sturdy defenses and ways to ensure their Wisps' well-being thanks to Entangled Gold Mine and Moon Wells, Human needs a bit of help. They are suffering a little too much compared to everyone else in terms of economy harass. Possible solutions: increased peasant HP from 220 to 230.
I don't think it does enough.
Increase arcane tower damage against summons from 20 to 22. Risk: low.
I think
While
human
the peasant
peasants should
HP
move
buff would be
quicker and
beneficial
gather
not
lumber
only for
faster.
defensive purposes but also for aggressive potential with militia attacks. I don't believe that this change should go too far, and the arcane tower buff would also only be slight, but much appreciated. Treants, wolves, water elementals and skeletons should become a little easier to deal with.
The thing that trashes human
the
peasants
Undead
the
tier
most
3 timing
is either heroes just walking in and casting Carrion Swarm, Chain Lightning, Shockwave, that kind of thing, or summons. It's those two things that cause human peasants by far the most deaths, like a Warden blinks in, Fan of Knife, with an anti-magic shield. Lol. Not going to get touched by the Arcane Tower. You can try to walk your peasants away or militia them away. Good luck with that. She'll still find them. She'll still get them whilst the anti-magic shield is up. So even trying to split them doesn't always really reward you. You're still going to lose like 3 out of the 5, which is still crippling, on top of like the 5 that you might have lost initially from the first couple of Fox. So if they had some sort of resistance to spell damage, I think that would help a lot. And that resistance to spell damage could be like resistance to summon attack damage and spell casts. So something like, if you look at the archer, she takes less damage from spell casts and takes reduced damage from ranged attacks or something, I believe. So it would be some sort of passive along that line where they take 20% less damage from casted spells like Carrion Swarm, Fan of Knives, and in turn the ability also gives them 20% less damage taken from treants, wolves, water elementals. If they're being attacked by a summonable unit, they take less damage. That would be my solution.
Little easier to deal with. The Undead Tier 3 time-in push with 50 supply, or triple hero, fiends, statues against the human expansion is a little too strong. While this push is not impossible to hold, it is extremely hard for human. Some changes are in order. Possible solutions. Decrease level 1 Rain of Fire range from 800 to 700 and reduce the damage by around 10%. Make knights have Sundering Blades by
Fire,
default.
that's the Pit Lord ability.
Risk, low. When it comes to the push to the expansion for the human, every little thing counts. Every tower placement, every storm bolt, every flying machine, every knight. These changes would have significant impact and should be a step in the right direction. The nice thing about giving knights Sundering Blades by default is that it greatly helps human with early timings exactly what they need but doesn't really make them too strong in a drawn-out, long macro game. The same way that tanks are cancerous to the game from the human side, Necro Wagon pushes are cancerous from the undeads. Spamming limitless amounts of skeletons with virtually no answer from the human is extremely one-dimensional and quite frankly dumb. While this strategy never used to be too good, that has now changed with the strength of the Crit Lord. Possible solution. Reduce the maximum amount of corpses that meat wagons can carry from 8 to 4. Risk, low. This would certainly be a considerable nerf. But just as with tanks it would be a very deserved one. Mass necro pushes are no fun at all and should not have a place in the meta, or if they should then only in very rare cases. General problems. There is a big discrepancy in power between the tier 3.
I don't have much to say on this one. Like, just reducing the amount of corpses the meat wagons can carry is kind of okay. I don't know if max necro wagons is common enough for it to warrant a nerf. I don't see enough pro games where it occurs. But I do understand that when it does happen, it can snowball like mad. And the Necros just keep on whacking out more and more skeletons. It's just endless corpses from these meat wagons. So I think something like reducing the amount of corpses isn't going to be like making every undead player go, oh no, undead is unplayable now. But again, that would probably be better for undead players to discuss amongst themselves as to whether that would be a warranted nerf.
General problems. There is a big discrepancy in power between the tier 3 late game melee fighters of the races. While abominations and mountain giants are strong and in a good spot, the other three are a lot weaker in comparison. Possible solutions. Make improved pulverize also grant Torrens resistant skin. Give knights Sundering Blades by default. Increase Druid of the Claw starting mana by 25 and reduce Bear Form mana cost from 25 to 15. Risk, low moderate low. As I outlined earlier, these buffs would be significant but also very much needed. Magic immune units should be supporting casters and only be good in low numbers. When armies consist of mostly magic immune units, it takes so much fun and so many interesting aspects away from the game. As spells a key ingredient of War 3 suddenly get rendered almost useless. Mass destroyers used to be played in the past, and that made for very frustrating and dull games. With significant nerfs to their stats, the mass destroyers were curbed, while they still remain relevant as supporting units in low numbers today exactly as it should be. With Dryads we had a similar situation. The problem in the meta today is with spell breakers. In 2 matchups Hue vs Orc and Hue vs Hue mass breakers is too strong and too oppressive. Magic immune units shouldn't have stats strong enough to allow for massing only them for a late game army. But breakers do have stats strong enough to allow for this. And that is detrimental to the game. In the matchup against Orc they even super counter the Farseer with their ability to steal Spirit Wolves, when Orc already has the greatest problem dealing with mass breakers.
I'll be interested to see what the answer is here. I don't know. Spellbreakers are kind of weak source to a degree. Like, it's not like they're powerful units. Have you ever seen a spellbreaker try to kill something? Like, seriously. Just stick a spellbreaker and a dummy and a footman and a dummy and watch the two do damage. Spellbreakers are kind of pathetic. But I understand that they do get massed, and it's when they get massed is when they're a problem. So, what's the answer to the mass?
In the matchup against Orkney, possible solution. Reduce Spellbreaker armor from 3 to 2. Move the control magic ability upgrade back to tier 3. Risk, low. Mass Spellbreakers are too prevalent. They promote no fun gameplay, while Spellbreakers are interesting units and should certainly have a place in the meta. It should not be in mass. And targeting their base stats to make them a little weaker in head-to-head fights like back then with destroyers should be the correct and a very healthy change for the game. There are a number of abilities which are quite interesting in theory, but are in actuality just way too weak and...
I don't know, really. Neither of these two nerfs are dramatic enough to sort of make Spellbreakers unplayable, so they're pretty reasonable nerfs. I'm not sure if they're the answer, though. I'm just trying to think. Spellbreakers, they take a lot of damage from just heroes alone. Once the heroes get powerful enough, they're pretty... Like, Control Magic being tier 3, I understand that Control Magic being early on tier 2 is a problem. What you would kind of need is almost to make them something like tier 2.5. Almost as if Control Magic was 2 upgrades or something. But it doesn't work like that, the ability where it could be 2 upgrades. Like, if you could slow down the ability to get Control Magic, but not slow it down so much that it was tier 3, but I can't think of exactly how you would do that other than force the human player to build a workshop or something like that, because that's what other kind of building would you build. They're probably already going to have an arcane vault, so I'm not entirely sure on that. I don't have a great answer to it.
There are a number of abilities which are quite interesting in theory, but are in actuality just way too weak.
I don't think there's any unit that is unarmored, Bedito. Other than maybe Huntress. There's not many, yeah. Anyway.
There are a number of abilities which are quite interesting in theory, but are in actuality...
Casters... Yeah, there are, but I'm not sure about unarmored. I guess what I meant was I'm not sure about Spellbreakers getting unarmored. It just seems weird. But you can't give them fortified armor. If you give them heavy armor, heavy armor would make them stronger, wouldn't it? If they're immune to spell damage, they're not taking extra damage from magic damage. So I don't think heavy armor's gonna help. Light armor. So they take extra damage from piercing, but the game meta is already pretty heavy on piercing, so they get absolutely obliterated by crit fiends and stuff. Yeah, maybe reduce their base armor or something. Yeah, like Remo says. I don't know. There's no real easy solution to Spellbreakers, I don't think. They are a weird unit in the sense that they're a bit like Necromancers in a way. They're kind of crappy in low numbers, but once you get like enough of them, they're almost unstoppable. So that's this. You need to think of it that kind of way, and not sort of how do we nerf Spellbreakers individually or in small packs. How do we nerf them when they get to that critical mass? And effectively, they're just too much to handle. Like maybe a slightly slower movement speed or something along that line, so they can't chase you down so easily because they've got those big shields. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure.
There are a number of abilities which are quite possible solutions. Increase Demon Hunter's immolation damage by 10% on all levels. Remove the initial mana cost of turning the skill on and improve the damage tick intervals from 1.0 seconds to 0.5 seconds, meaning...
Give them a mana cost to hold up magic immunity. Maybe? What, like... Almost like Immolation, where it would drain mana. And therefore that would reduce the amount of mana they could have to use control magic. But it would have to be a dramatically reduced version of Immolation Mana Drain, because otherwise they'd run out of mana super quickly. But that's an interesting idea, at least.
Remove the initial mana cost of turning the skill on and improve the damage tick intervals from 1.0 seconds to 0.5 seconds, meaning Immolation does damage every half second rather than every second. This would help tremendously with properly microing a demon hunter with Immolation.
Was it doing damage every 0.5
seconds? Increase burning oil damage by
twice as much
25%. Make Farsight give the Farseer an intelligence buff of +4, +8, +12 for 20 seconds after using the ability.
That's kind of cool.
Make Thorn's Aura reflect damage of both ranged and melee attacks instead of just melee. Change the Death Knight's ultimate to make Enema Dead Summon 2.
So there's a lot of random things going on over here. Demon Hunter Immolation buff is fine. I hate Demon Hunter, but I don't think you'd have to buff Immolation quite a lot to stop the buggers from just going boring mana burn. I want mana burn changed so it's effectively more like Siphon mana. And the Demon Hunter has to stand there for a second or something before he can effectively drain mana, because it's so irritating as they run in and mana drain and then run out and then they just rinse and repeat. It's the most boring thing to fight against in the world, and there's almost nothing you can do against it. Increase burning oil damage. That's kind of okay. It's a very late upgrade, so that seems alright. What are you guys yapping on about? What about changing spell immune units to spell resistance and 95% resistance or whatever? That they take little damage to AoE spells. You're thinking along the lines of Divine Armor, aren't you? So you can still damage them, but they're no longer truly immune. I've always believed that's a good idea as well. I think that should possibly happen for like the Warden's Vengeance. Instead of them being literally invulnerable, you know, they just take a lot of reduced damage. That would almost be a slight buff to them to a degree, in the sense that they would start tanking in fights more often when people sort of auto-attack in combat. If they're not properly concentrating, they'll have units attacking those little vengeance things, but it wouldn't make it so that you can't actually, you know, you can't do anything about it. So I'm okay with that. Sort of like nothing is truly immune, because that's part of the issue. When something is truly immune, there's like nothing you can do against it. But then again, how would that spell resistance work? Would War Stomp still work against Spellbreakers then, but it would only do 5% damage? Is that what you're saying? Or is you talking about spell resistance in sense of sorceress attacking and only 5% of their magic damage hits the Spellbreaker? Or a Spirit Walker attacking a spell can now attack a Spellbreaker, but he only does 5% damage. I don't know. An interesting idea though to raise nonetheless. Yeah, the Farsight getting the Farseer buff, that's fine. That's not going to like break the game or anything.
Never trust an elf.
Thank you, Lanky Walrus. The lankiest of all the walruses.
Change the Death Knight's ultimate to make Enema Dead.
What if Spellbreakers had like an 80% resistance or something like that? And that went for like everything. So if they got War Stomped, they only get stunned for 20% of the duration of a War Stomp on a normal unit. That kind of thing. 95% might be a bit too high. And the same could be said for like other units that are supposed to be spell immune. They could still be affected, for example. But I don't want to change the game too much. You've got to be careful with that. It's just throwing ideas out. They can easily be chucked in the bin.
Change the Death Knight's ultimate to make Enema Dead summon 2 abominations and 3 fiends, with a duration timer of course, instead of requiring 6 corpses.
Thorn's Aura reflecting damage of both ranged and melee attacks instead of just melee, I think would be too strong. You would effectively be like really hurting multiple units for free. Like, I think that's too strong. I don't think Keep of the Grove needs any freaking buffs. Change the Death Knight's ultimate to make Animate Dead summon 2 abominations and 3 fiends. That's cooler. That's cooler. I'm fine with that. Give the Beastmasters level 3 summons 40% spell resistance. Yeah, that kind of thing would help a lot, so they're not so easily countered. Because what is the Beastmaster? He's just basically a grunt that summons units. So if you've got strong counter to summons, he is really useless. Decrease Stasis Trap mana cost from 100 to 90 and increase Stasis Trap health. Yeah, that's fine. I don't have any issues with basically most of those changes.
Change the death.
Oh no, we run out. So let's change to the free and just go with Syrah. You should still be able to understand.
Risk. Moderate low 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 low. These abilities are all so underused and so weak that buffing them a little should not break anything within the game in my estimation. The Demon Hunter's Immolation change I suppose is the one that might have a big impact. Late game magic damage flying units are too weak. Griffins, Frost WIRMS, and Chimeras are very interesting units, very unique, but are never seen. They are too expensive, take too long to build and get countered too easily by piercing damage. The thing is, that they can in fact be good in the super late game. If you ever do have the time and resources to get to 75 plus supply. But in nowadays meta that is almost never doable. So in order to make them more viable but not overpowered, I think the proper approach would be to make them cheaper and easier to acquire without actually buffing their stats too much. Possible solutions. Decrease Griffin Rider build time from 45 to 40 seconds and reduce their gold cost from 280 to 260. Decrease Frost WIRM build time from 65 to 55 seconds and reduce their gold cost from 385 to 355. Decrease Chimera build time from 60 to 55 seconds and reduce their gold cost from 330 to 305. Remove Chimera's friendly fire splash damage. Risk, moderate moderate moderate. While I don't think that buffs like these should make these exotic units overperform, this could certainly greatly change their role in the current meta. With everything being timed and measured so razor-thin and precisely at the top level nowadays, it is impossible to say where exactly changes like these would lead.
Okay, so I'm okay for the most part with this, although I wouldn't want them to be like reduced by much, because you don't want the late game just becoming mass griffins, mass frostworms, mass chimeras, because then that presents problems in itself if they're too effective. They are very strong. It's hard to get them. I think Griffin Rider reduction in cost maybe from 280 to 270. I don't think you should touch frostworms at all. Maybe a slight reduction in their time to be built. 65 to say 55 or 60 would be okay, but don't reduce the costs. Frostworms are ridiculously powerful. Ridiculously powerful. So the last thing I want to see is a game where people can get more frostworms. Decrease Chimera's build time from 60 to 55. You could make them 60 to 50, I think, and reduce their cost from 330 to 320 or 315. And I think that would be okay, like if it's just like the tiniest reduction. Because I don't really want to see any of these units getting massed, because as soon as that happens, it's kind of ridiculous.
Item imbalance has been greatly improved over the years, but there are still some outliers, items which are either too good or too weak. Possible solutions. Reduce Claws of Attack +6 to +5. Reduce Cadger's Pipe of Insight from 1.0 mana per second to 0.75 mana per second, would also fit with the AM aura. Remove Helm of Valor, Medallion of Courage and Hood of Cunning from the drop table and replace them with Crown of Kings. Reduce Wand of the Wind charges to 2. Reduce Sentry Ward vision range from 1,600 to 1,200 and make them give
Sentry
30
Wards are
experience
bonkers
when
if
killed.
you get those. They're so
Reduce
powerful.
Tome of Retraining gold cost from 300 to 150.
Well, that one I agree with, because I said that.
Increase HP restored when revived with Ankh of Reincarnation from 500 to 600.
Alright, so let's stop there for the moment and go over those. Claws of Attack from +6 to +5. I don't want to do that because it just reduces the kind of fun potential you can have with certain heroes. It's so rare that you can get a hero that can actually benefit from like mass Claws of Attack or something along those lines. I suppose this is only affecting the first level of claws of attack, though. It's not affecting claws of attack +9 or +15. As long as that doesn't follow afterwards, I would be okay with that, because claws of attack +6 is basically the best item you can get in the early game, because a lot of the time heroes creep and then they harass one another. The hero that does the most damage is typically going to be the victorious one, because once you've got the enemy hero in a position where they know that they can't compete with your hero in a 1-to-1 duel, they're going to run away. And they have to run away. And in fights, it's very painful when your hero has to sit so far at the back and never able to attack if the enemy hero... So say, for example, you've got 3 footmen hitting here, 3 footmen hitting here. Boom, they're going at it. And you've got 1 archmage here that's got 2 claws of attack plus gloves of haste, and an archmage here with ring of protection plus, I don't know, let's say slippers of agility. This one is going to absolutely wipe the floor with that one. So this one is never going to feel comfortable being in this fight, because every time he wants to right-click one of the footmen to weaken them, this archmage is just going to stand right here and hit him. And you just say, well, why don't the footmen hit the archmage? Well, the archmage can easily bounce back and forth whenever it needs to, and the other footmen are getting free hits in. So, yeah, I think claws of attack, the first one, could be reduced to 5. I'm okay with that. I think Khadga's Pipe of Insight reduced is absolutely fine, because I actually didn't know exactly how much mana it gave, but that's quite a lot. You don't want aura items to be so bad, though, that you almost want to replace them. So I'm not exactly sure how that would affect, but I think everyone's normally quite happy to get Khadga's Pipe of Insight. So 0.75, if it does match the Archmage aura, is okay. I disagree with removing these 3 items, because I think they're quite unique, but I think they should get a buff. So instead of like +4/+4, they were like +4/+3/+2. So they're getting a very minor buff. It's only +1 extra, but it still gives them that just that bit more power, and then they're not quite completely useless. Or if you were going to say, okay, +4/+3/+2 is too weak, how about +5/+3/+2? Therefore, their initial stat bonus, say for example +5 strength, you're not hurting, because it's basically a much better version of a belt of giant strength. A belt of giant strength is just +6 strength, whereas if you get +5 strength, then +3 agility and +2 intelligence. That's pretty damn good. Crown of Kings is too powerful. That should just sit in 4 versus 4 RT games or something like that. I like the idea of it being in 1 versus 1, because you can have a super overpowered hero, but I'm pretty sure at the top level they wouldn't like it, because they wouldn't want someone, because you can imagine how upset really strong players would be if their opponent gets a Crown of Kings. Get a Crown of Kings on a Demon Hunter or a Blade Master, and you'll look, it's game over basically. It's very hard to compensate for that level of power. So you would either need, and I think I said it in the Todd review, because I did a review on Todd's balance changes, you would need not to change the Crown of Kings, but to introduce a new item that is similar to the Crown of Kings. And I called it Crown of Queens just for fun, but you could call it whatever you want. But effectively, instead of +5 to all stats, it's just +4 to all stats. So it's like this improved version. It's a powerful item, but +5 is just too much, I think. +4 to everything is bordering that line where it's maybe acceptable. Would I like to have more new items in Melee? I would. Yes. I would like more chargeable items, like Lightning Shield, sort of Wand of Illusion. It doesn't have to be more Lightning Shields, but it's items that are basically effectively unit abilities. So you could think of it like along the lines of Banshee Curse, or an item that gave you Anti-Magic Shield or something like that. Stuff that is practical and will affect the meta literally every single game, because you get these chargeable items and they will change how you play. Wand of Illusion does that. Sentry Wards does that, although Sentry Wards is a little overpowered and boring. So you want more items that are along the lines of Wand of Illusion, where they're an actual item that affects what you're going to do. You might, upon picking up this item, decide to attack where you would never have attacked normally. It just gives you that little edge to then change up your gameplay and give you that chance. So look along the lines of what units actually do. A Wand of Regeneration, for example, give you 2 charges or 1 charge of regeneration, like the bear. That would allow your hero to get a free health But it could be a minor version where it's like 350 health back. So that's 350 health over time on your hero. Not Scepter of Mastery, that's too powerful. But yes, along the lines of stuff that allows you to, you know, play more bits, have some more fun. Units that give an item to give units berserk. See, you guys are coming up with lots of ideas now. Do you see how an item like that can affect the game? Because it would make you think, oh, how can I use this item? This is going to completely change what I was going to originally do. And now I'm going to create a new strategy revolved around picking up one or two of these items. Wand of Greed. Cast it on an enemy creep and it doubles the bounty that it drops. Or, and this would be too broken, but what if you had a Wand of Super Greed where if you cast it on a unit, creeps only, the item that unit then drops is upgraded one tier. So, for example, if an Ogre Lord was going to drop a level 5 permanent item, it now drops a level 6 permanent item. You can go quite far with this, and you could see how powerful it could potentially get, but it gives you ideas. Yep, this is what I thought as well. Tome of Retraining being reduced in cost would be really, really good because it would just allow for more fun gameplay. Again, it's similar to the items. It would change how you might play your hero. Now you might swap over. You might feel like, oh, I can go Sentry Wards. I can go Serpent Wards now with my Shadow Hunter instead of Hex and Heal. Now that we've got to like the mid game, I can only spend 150 gold to get that. But 300 gold is too much. Increased health restored when revived with Ankh. That's okay. I don't have too much issue with that. So increase the sell value from items is fine. I think this is a slightly reduced version of what Todd suggests, but I think item sell gold on the lower tier items should maybe be slightly more. I think the higher tier items are quite good normally anyway, like getting 200 gold for Scroll of the Beast. I know Scroll of the Beast can be one of the most powerful items in the game in certain contexts, with like a tier 2 push or something like that on mass berserkers or whatnot. But generally speaking, a lot of players are just quite happy to sell it and get 200 gold like that, which would really help them build that extra thing they need to build or research that extra thing or even get that tech quicker. So I don't think you should increase the cost of the sell price of items too much, but maybe the lower tier ones, like items of level 1 to 3, something like that, like.
Increase item sell gold value from 50% to 65%. Currently the way it works is that you can sell items for 50% of their gold value. I think this amount should be increased to 65%.
No, Scroll of the Beast doesn't stack with Druid Raw. I don't think so.
Because regardless of how well we balance the item drops, there will always be good versus bad items to find. Especially depending on any given situation within a game. So finding bad items will always be a constant, no matter what. We can't change that. But by increasing their sell value we can at least reduce the negative impact that finding bad items has.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely
Risk,
sensible answer.
low all around. The mentioned items are clearly either a little too weak or too strong. Changing them should only come with benefits.
So yeah, I think that's a really good solution. If you do get those bad items, which does happen, you just get compensated a bit more for it. You know? This isn't going to be too effective. Like, you can't complain. Like, if you got Claws of Attack and a Gloves of Haste and your opponent got 2 Slippers of Agility and they're an Archmage, they're both Archmages, it's not like, oh, you got more money for selling them. We'll sell your items as well then, and you get that extra money. You're not going to do it, are you? Because you still want that Claws of Attack and Gloves of Haste. Do you see what I mean? So, that's fine. Right, what have we got? We're almost at the end now. The mentions... Sorry about...
Changing them. Tavern revives are too accessible and allow for the richer player to recover from mistakes much more easily than the opponent. Hero kills feel as if they are of no consequence for a player with plenty of resources. These easy revives detract tension from the game.
This is a high level thing. I'm so stubborn that a lot of the time I don't get my hero from the altar, from the tavern, because I hate paying more money for it. But I understand that on the high level, especially seeing Grubby as well, a lot of the games will just immediately go to the tavern. Even if the cost seems ridiculous, getting that hero out straight away and back onto the fight. It's easier as Orc though because they got healing cells. It just, yeah, it does feel a little bit like there's not much of a punishment, but I suppose the cost of the heroes is supposed to be a punishment.
Possible solution. Implement a limit
I don't
of
like
2
that
tavern
though,
revives per game per
because
player.
who knows how the game goes. You could have one of
Risk
these super long
low.
games.
It is a rare occurrence
And you don't
already
want there
to
to
see
be
a
some
player
weird
tavern
cap.
revive a hero more than once, let alone twice in a single game. However, when it does happen, it can feel rather unfair and deflating.
Yeah, nah, I don't think that needs to be changed. My biggest issue with the tavern is that the initial cost of the hero isn't expensive enough. Right, I think it's still only 425 gold, but it's like 135 lumber instead of 100 lumber. But go into a tavern that is more often than not halfway through the map, so it's closer to any objective and the place than where you are initially starting from. So whether you're creeping, harassing your opponent's expansion, attacking their base with that tier 2 tavern instant pickup. So when you reach tier 2, you go to the tavern, you are already halfway towards any objective you need to be. And it only costs you 35 extra lumber, and you get the hero immediately, is insanely overpowered. I think I might be one of the few people that thinks that's the case, but I'm telling you it's the bloody case. Compare that to waiting 50 seconds or something like that for your hero to come all the way from the altar. So it's got to not only take 50 seconds to build, then it's got to travel from the altar to reach the halfway point in the map, which is typically about 20 to 30 seconds. Sorry, more like, yeah, about 20-ish seconds, 15 to 20 seconds. Like, time is everything in this game, in any sort of competitive game. So we're having to wait effectively a minute to a minute and a half for your hero to actually be effective from the altar versus the hero that you just immediately pick from the tavern is ridiculous. Tavern heroes should cost more gold. So I don't agree with increasing the wood anymore, because 135 lumber when you reach tier 2 is pretty important, because obviously you want to get like your tier 2 buildings like Arcane Sanctum or Spirit Lodge, Bestiary, whatever it might be. So just increase the gold cost by an extra 100. So instead of 425 gold, it's 525 gold. That's what I think. As for the tavern revive, I don't know if that needs changing. My biggest gripe with the tavern is just instantly picking up a hero, and it's effective immediately. It's so ridiculously strong in comparison to getting a hero from the altar all the way back at your base. There's such a stark difference in power spike there. Such a stark difference, and I'm surprised more people aren't upset about that. So those are Remo's notes. I'll have a link to those in the description below. I think he wrote this up very well. Whether you agree or disagree, he gave good reasons and solutions, ideas. He threw stuff out, his thoughts as to how powerful and risky this might be towards the game is interesting, and I like that he did that. So well done there, Remo. And yeah, that will pretty much sum it up. So take from it what you will. It's interesting to go over these and think about what you can potentially do for Warcraft 3 in the future. Thank you very much for anyone that actually did manage to watch to this point. Thumbs up and subscribe, and take care. All the best.